day 6 of CineCity, the Salis Benny Theatre, Brighton's newest film venue, played host to the UK premiere of Daren Bartlett's Brazilian short O Zelador, an exploration of the life of Husu and his use of capoeira as a philosophy to help him endure a life fraught with hardships and danger. Duke of York's film programmer Jason Wood played host to the proceedings.
My name is Jason Wood and I'm actually the programmer of the Duke of York's, which normally is a cue for people to throw things at me. And I'm also on the board of the CineCity Film Festival, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you all here to the Salis Benny Theatre. How many of you are Brighton residents? Excellent. This is going to be a very, very important cultural venue in Brighton life, so you must come and support it. It's the first time I've seen it tonight. I think it looks absolutely fantastic, and I think the plan long term is to use this cinema and space as a venue for films that can't get into the single screen Duke of York. So I think you're going to be seeing some really interesting films here, so you must come and support it. Of all the films playing in CineCity this year, and I think it's one of the strongest lineups we've ever had, I have to say it gives me real personal pleasure to be screening this film tonight, O Zelador. I've known Daren Bartlett, the director, and the producer, Abby Clark, for a long, long time, and I've watched this film kind of inch towards completion, and I've seen how hard they've worked on it, and I think the results are there for you all to see tonight. I think this is the UK premiere, and it's a real delight to be able to host it here in Brighton. And even better is we're going to have Daren to answer a few questions after the film, and also to give an introduction. So please welcome the film's director, Daren Bartlett.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Like the good man said here, it was a slow process. It took 4 years to make this film. It didn't start out to be a feature-length film, but as the process unfolded, the creative process, I realised that the film had a lot more to offer, and it was just a question of time and digging and finding the secrets within the film. I think the overall message of the film is one of Brazil is supposed to be one way, but actually, if you look closely at Brazil, it's a very complex society, and a society that suffers from social exclusion, and I think that's the real message of this film that comes across. But in that social exclusion, people empower themselves with the culture that they have, the things that they have, emphasis on family and culture. That's all I've got to say really, so thank you very much for coming.
Following the well-received screening, Jason welcomed Daren back to the stage for a lively Q&A session.
Daren Bartlett. What we're going to do, we're going to have a chat for a bit, and then we'll throw it open to the audience and take some questions from the audience. And I was going to start by saying it's changed a lot from the version I saw, I have to say.
Really?
Yeah. It felt, if I'm honest, it felt tighter. And there seemed to be more context about the history. But we'll come back to that. I mean, the first thing I wanted to ask really was, you get a tremendous view of this film. I mean, I knew nothing about capoeira and little about the culture of Brazil. And you really get a sense of that from this film. And I just wondered how somebody like yourself, who's from the UK, first became interested in the culture, and what precipitated you to go to Brazil to make the film.
Well, I've been involved in capoeira. I've played capoeira for a little while now, close to a decade really.
Right.
And I think we're very inquisitive in Europe, and Brazilians tend to take it for granted. Oh, it's capoeira. But we're naturally very inquisitive, and we like to dig a little deeper. And something that's happened to capoeira in the recent years is that people have tend to put it into boxes and divide capoeira, where capoeira is a very modern manifestation. People say, put it in terms of a sport or an African version of capoeira, but capoeira is not really any of this. It's something that's always gone with capoeira. It's always been intrinsic in the very nature of capoeira. And so this interested me, this one question that as Europeans we like to just kind of define things, and just once we've pigeonholed it we can put it to side, but it didn't really sit well with me, and so I sort of looked a little deeper and realised that, you know, someone needed to do something and show it in perhaps the the social context. And once he put it in a social context with samba and candomblé, it seemed very obvious that people could see more easily what capoeira is. You know.
And what about? I've been told to pronounce it huso.
Husu, yeah.
Husu, it's close. No cigar. How did you first come to your? I mean, he's such an enigmatic and inspirational figure. How did he first come to your attention? And at what point in the making of this film that you wanted to document the history of capoeira and the context, did he sort of suggest himself as what would be a good, I hate to say central figure in the film, but he kind of acts as I said, for somebody like me that didn't know too much about it, he's the kind of hook that draws you into it.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a person that really the story started. I studied film and I was practicing capoeira, and I'd met many people that went under the guise of being a capoeira master, but I'd met very few. I'd met a few older guys and people in New York. I'd met a few, but literally you could count on one hand. With someone I'd say that was a capoeira master, but Husu, just by his own definition, presented himself as someone different. He said, I'm not really a capoeira master, you know, I'm just looking after this thing here. And when someone elevates himself into a position of being a master, they can sometimes feed into their own beliefs of someone who is slightly above. And this can cause problems for some people. So just by the very nature of him saying this to me interested me. And there was one other thing he said to me about capoeira. He said to me, capoeira in itself is very unimportant in Brazilian society. But what is important within capoeira, within society in Brazil, is, or capoeira's significance within Brazilian society, is the fact that it's an instrument that can be used to elevate yourself, not as a capoeirista, but as a human being. And here is someone who obviously lives in extreme poverty and doesn't have much going for him in terms economically, but spiritually, it's a cliche, but they're some of the most happy people I've ever met. And as they recalibrated themselves and just saw what's really important to them and worked with what they got. And it was just that one thing. It's capoeira is how you elevate yourself. It's not about movement. It's just how you use this to elevate yourself as a human and rise above.
He's a very humble person. There's a line in the film where he talks about the teaching of self-esteem. And I think the thing that really comes out of the film strongest is this idea of what he gives back to his community and his people. He sees maybe some of the mistakes that he's made in his past, and he tries to help the younger people coming through from not make those mistakes. But it's this idea of self-esteem, as you said, and rising above the poverty of his situation. He's spiritually rich. But I think that's one of the most important things for me that comes out of the film, is this idea of if you have self-respect and dignity and treat others with respect and dignity, your economic situation becomes in some ways irrelevant is the wrong word, but that's something that he very much teaches. Tolerable.
Yeah. He's someone. He actually, for someone who's, I think he left school when he was 11. I don't know if it's an actual term, but to me, he strikes me as being a sort of an organic academic. He comes out with some really amazing phrases sometimes. I don't know where he gets them from, but he says, I may not be rich, but I carry an awful lot of symbolic capital. Which for someone who left school at 11, I don't know where he picked that little phrase up from, but it's actually true. You know, he's a guy that is when he steps into a room, he gives off. If you're interested and you're receptive, you'll be drawn to him. You know, there's some other guys in this as well that came from that same hodder. They're all very disadvantaged, and in their own way, they've used capoeira. There was a guy, Cobra Mansa, Junangia. These guys have gone on and really moved into the world, into the arena, and forwarded capoeira in a positive way. But Husu decided to stay. That wasn't his thing. He decided to stay in the Baixada and stay working in the Roda. And thank goodness he did, because it would have diminished for sure. It wouldn't be there anymore. And I think all these guys now kind of look up to Husu, but they look to him and can see the value of what he did.